Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 988. Joint Operation. Emlyn couldn't help but clasp his hands together, lift up his chin, and say to Miss Magician diagonally opposite him, "I've already confirmed that the ancient abandoned castle in Delaire Forest is an internal test that the Sanguine had given me, having hidden the key situation." With that said, he felt as though a weight had been lifted off his chest. He no longer felt as hesitant, embarrassed due to the difficult situation he was in. He surveyed the area and looked for Ma'am Hermit's and Mr. Hangman's reaction. He realized that they appeared to have expected it, showing no signs of surprise. From the looks of it, they had already an idea when Miss Magician mentioned the problem with the intel. Emlyn nodded his head in secret and added before Miss Magician replied, "I'm very sorry. I will refund you the £300 for the intel fee. In addition, I'll pay you another £300. Also, I will punish the Sanguine who deliberately omitted information. Although Mr. Moon always wears a proud demeanor, he's rather sincere when a mistake has been made. He didn't find an excuse to push the blame onto. However, I've already obtained the ancient wraith's cursed item and remnant spirituality, so the matter is already over. He didn't deliberately wish to cause harm to me and Zio. There's no need for me to get so much compensation." Furs remembered Zio's exhortations. Without looking at her, she said, "It's only a matter of oversight. There's no need for compensation. Just refunding me for the intel fee is sufficient." Just as she said that, she suddenly thought of something. Since the ancient abandoned castle was a test of the Sanguine, didn't that mean that Zio and herself had been targeted by the Sanguine? Furs finally couldn't hold back as she turned to glance at Zio. She found misjudgment shaking her head slightly, indicating that she hadn't discovered anyone monitoring them. This? Furs felt puzzled and found it inexplicable. She then allowed her thoughts to wander, as she recalled the situation back then. We did the exploration only after quite a while. The Sanguine had already lost their patience by then? The boss of the Townsend knew of the ancient abandoned castle. He was a Sanguine in disguise? That's not right. Many of the locals knew of this matter. However, that place was too far away and there wasn't anything of value left inside. That's why, unless one was out hunting, people usually wouldn't head in that direction. That's not right. If the ancient abandoned castle were that dangerous, why are the people who use it for shelter from the rain completely fine? They only describe it as creepy and a little scary? Yes, the Sanguine would usually seal off the passage that heads underground. They opened it for the test? This means that there was some form of monitoring. Because the ancient castle is too dangerous, the monitoring was done outside the forest and not inside. As Zio and I got lost, we circled around the monitors and weren't detected? Mr. Fool didn't mention anything about it. It's probably not a huge problem. More attention needs to be taken when I return. As Furz's thoughts raced, Emlyn said after some pondering, "Okay." He didn't insist on additional compensation, because he believed that the best form of compensation was to punish Ernst Boyar instead of giving money. Then, he waited for Miss Magician to ask about the punishment, hoping that he could take the opportunity to make an inquiry to the other Tarot Club members. He wanted to see if he could get any good suggestions. As for Furs, upon considering that it was an internal matter for the Sanguine and that although she was a victim, Mr. Moon hadn't offered a plan for action, she decided not to press further in consideration for his feelings. Instead, she decided to wait for the conclusion to see if it was satisfactory. The palace that looked like a giant's residence turned silent as the mood turned odd. Audrey looked opposite her and glanced to the side. Pursing her lips, she, curiously, asked, "Mr. Moon, how do you plan on punishing that Sanguine?" "Phew." Emlyn silently exhaled as he subconsciously looked at the world. "He did so because of orders from the higher-ups. I believe that this mistake isn't something that deserves payment with his life." In between the lines, Emlyn was implying that Mr. World didn't need to intervene in this matter. There was no need to escalate the matter. Seeing the world having no objections, Emlyn cast his gaze forward. "I plan on leading that Sanguine to a particular cathedral of the Church of Earth Mother in Backlund. Having participated in so many tarot gatherings, even if he couldn't be concerned about certain details, he knew the requirement of hiding matters regarding himself in the real world. Therefore, he didn't mention the Harvest Church. The Church of Earth Mother only has one cathedral in all of Backland. That's the Harvest Church. The rest are all in the outskirts and surroundings villages. Leonard held back his laughter as he looked up at the dome above. You wish to have the Beyonders of the Church of Earth Mother purify that sanguine? Furs blurted out in surprise. From her point of view, this was no different from directly killing the person in question. Emlyn was momentarily at a loss for words. At that moment, Katla interrupted. The Church of Earth Mother has the habit of inducting the sanguine into the church, converting their faith and making them priests or bishops. I see. With thoughts in mind, Audrey glanced at Mr. Moon without letting him notice it. Getting that sanguine to become a member of the clergyman, to pray daily at the cathedral and do voluntary work, so as to cleanse the heart. He would be stuck doing this for a very long period of time. Mr. Moon's plan for punishment is really vicious. However, I like it. That fellow nearly made me and Zio turn into ancient wraiths due to the corruptive powers behind the door. Furs instantly felt her interest piqued as she asked, Mr. Moon, how do you plan on luring the sanguine into the Cathedral of Earth Mother? Have you worked out a plan? Perhaps I can provide some help. You have to be careful. You mustn't enter the Cathedral of Earth Mother in order to punish him. That way, the only thing you can do is to request Mr. Fool for help. Of course, that might be something Mr. Fool wishes to happen, allowing him to have someone on the inside of the Church of Earth Mother. After saying that, Furs silently added. Upon hearing that, Leonard nearly laughed out. He was extremely certain that Mr. Moon was the Harvest Church's Emlyn White. Clearly, this sanguine was already a priest of Earth Mother. This is slightly akin to a drowning person pulling others in. Leonard held back his laughter, glanced at the world, and he found that his former colleague didn't seem perturbed. He appeared extremely somber. He couldn't help but think, is this the power of a clown, or is it a state that Klein is accustomed to? At the end of the long model table, the fool Klein nearly covered his mouth. He never expected Emlyn to be so creative. This was a little like multi-level marketing, yet it's a little different. After all, it's not necessarily a good thing for Emlyn to know of that. Klein leaned back into his chair as he awaited the development with piqued interest. He had always kept in mind Miss Justice's advice during his last treatment session about not always wearing a thick mask. He tried his best to do so when opportunities arose so as to maintain a healthy mental state. Upon hearing Miss Magician's words of concern, Emlyn felt even more awkward because he went to the Cathedral of Earth Mother several times a day on a daily basis. He felt uncomfortable even if he skipped the weekends. He cleared his throat and said, I temporarily do not have a thought-out plan. I wish to get some suggestions from all of you. Yes, I hope that we do not have too intense a battle. It's difficult to ensure that the matter doesn't escalate, and I also do not wish for my identity to be directly exposed. Miss Magician, there are no problems regarding your participation, but we will absolutely not be meeting each other. His idea of not directly exposing his identity meant that he didn't mind that Ernst Boyar and the other sanguine could guess that he did it. It was a way to instill shock and awe in them, but it was best that there wasn't any obvious evidence. Furs tersely answered as she mimicked the other experienced members of the Tarot Club. First, you need to tell us what sequence that sanguine is roughly at and what he's good at. Emlyn was already prepared as he answered. It's equivalent to sequence 5. He's quite experienced and is good at creating the effects of the full moon. Effects of the full moon? Furs was taken aback as she turned agape but was unable to say a word. After Emlyn finished the introduction, Furs said with a hollow chuckle, I recall that I have other matters to tend to. It might not be convenient for me to participate in this matter. When in a state similar to the full moon, she would hear Mr. Door's ravings. And this meant that she would instantly be heavily injured by the target, losing all her combat strength. Emlyn frowned slightly, displeased with Miss Magician's sudden change in attitude. At this moment Zio, who had been listening silently, said, I can participate. I just need a portion of the spoils. Miss Judgment's tone is very firm. It's like she wants to exact vengeance. Emlyn mumbled silently to himself and glanced at Ma'am Hermit and Mr. Hangman, only to discover that they temporarily had no intention of speaking. It appeared as though they wished to observe what kind of plan the Backlund members of the Tarot Club could come up with. As this involved her friends and how it could be the first mission that the Tarot Club members would participate in at the same time, Audrey was rather intrigued. After some observation, she said in deliberation, I can hypnotize that sanguine, allowing him to enter the Cathedral of Earth Mother himself. However, to not expose ourselves and to ensure a high chance of success, it's best that he's in a lost or half-dazed state while I hypnotize him. Mr. Moon, can you do that? Emlyn was summarizing his powers and items to consider a solution when Leonard suddenly laughed. That's simple, but I'll only be responsible for making that sanguine unconscious. Of course, the premise is that there's sufficient intel, and it depends on how we go about taking action. Just as he said that, Zion nodded and said, I'm good at tracking and investigation. You can leave intel matters to me. All right. First, Mr. Moon will have to inform me of that sanguine's name, address, and appearance. All right. Emlyn heaved a sigh of relief before saying in a somewhat lost manner, Then what's my part in all of this? Also, what kind of payment do you want,